Hey guys, what is going on? So yesterday I wasn't able to do the video only because I had some commitments to the Falcon community where I had to essentially run an accountability call. So yeah, it is what it is. But moving forward, we'll still make up for it. So let's move forward. So we are looking at the Sunday market breakdown. This is my watch list. You can see there isn't a lot of pairs on watch at the moment. Some things could be filtered in though, I'll be honest with you, but I think rather than going through my watch list, I'm just going to go through all the pairs. So starting with the DXY, I mean right now the DXY is still in a indecisive area in my opinion, right? Because we are in this corrective push to the downside. Now there is massive upside potential equally to the downside, but more so what we're looking at is to see where price can create a floor. So if looking at the daily, we can see that these are the most significant areas that we were looking at last week. Currently, we are going to see if price can actually make its way back to that low. If we actually do respond to this area, I'm not necessarily looking for an entry. I mean, you could arguably say there was this steeper piece of price there, but once again, it's not the best. Learning to trade in these market conditions is a really good thing to obtain the ability to do, and I think more so, you know, just looking at that bit of price there, it doesn't look like my typical it doesn't look like my typical 3-touch that I would be taking advantage of, to be honest. I think the hourly is probably the better one to be looking at, and what we can see over here is that we have this section, and this could make sense to move to the downside. So I am primarily looking to see if it can fill this area, create a floor, perhaps even break below, then it taps into these lows, and then we can see it potentially pull back to the upside, right? The completion of this is not really so necessary, so that can be removed. It was only on there for visuals, and then now we're just kind of looking at that as an isolated piece of price, and then just want to see how it gets to the low. Most likely we might see something like this where it still ends up being corrective throughout the first small period of June, and then we get a push up. So I will be more patient with that, because I know that within these cycles we don't tend to just move quite rapidly. We do get the rapid price action from time to time, but it's not always something that we should be really banking all our bucks on. So there was a trade in this area here, but it wasn't the easiest to decipher, especially with getting caught in intraday position. So now that we have a little bit more clarity on this corrective channel, right, we can now see that we are coming into this area of interest. So that's the main point of interest. I'm no longer really married to that low. I want to see it kind of come in here, break below, tap into those areas, and then look for the long. And then if we get a push up, a continuation will be good for the long, and we can get positioned for a really nice sequence where momentum may come in for the DXY and related pairs. The JP225, moving on to that, I think I really do like the JP225 right now, only because it's showing that there could potentially be some really good upside movement. Now, not the cleanest in terms of how it's been moving. However, looking at the other yen pairs, which we'll go into shortly, you'll see that we can see that there is room for this to move to the upside. So now we just have to be sharp and ready for that. I wouldn't be getting into any trades because of how the price is kind of formulated here. I would just really wait to get a clear message from the market. If we do make our way up here, most likely correctively, then we can evaluate for shorts on this way down, right? And we can get positioned on a phenomenal run. So we're looking at that range play, but I don't think it's necessary to be trading in the middle of this range because of the corrective price action. Let's just wait and be patient. But on the on the related pairs like Aussie yen and Euro yen and so forth, Swiss yen, we can potentially position ourselves for a strategic long if presented. Moving on to Aussie CAD, so I do have Aussie CAD on watch this week. Aussie CAD is one that I'm really going to be extra patient with as well, because it's not your typical start to a sequence, right? So I want to be taking the lowest risk position possible, and how I'm going to really do that is that's going to be my line in the sand, and if we can break below, continuation below, to trade into the next point and then manage accordingly. This still has room to move higher because, as you can see, it's stalling just below this area. So it's likely that we could push up, reject, and come back down. Now, if that happens, it's a different situation. because if we can come back up to these areas, well then we are technically range bound for continuation to the upside. However, what we could see is potentially a move from A to B, and then potentially just be more aggressive in these areas. And then if we continue, great. If we retrace, then at least we can get positioned for the next entry to the upside. So that one's plain and simple, but right now I'm keeping it even more simple, and I've drawn my line in the sand because we haven't really got a confirmed range just yet. If we can reject for any reason, we just sell off, continuation down here, I can take that continuation into this low, and then I can manage it accordingly. Aussie Swiss is actually looking very nice as well. Now, the thing I do like about Aussie Swiss is that we are below this high area here, so there's no real need for me to put an entry on just yet. Compared to all the Swiss pairs, I think USD Swiss and definitely GBP Swiss were looking nicest, but Aussie Swiss, I'll be honest with you, it's not really the area of interest for me. Now, yes, we can sell off, create continuation and go, but it's because we're not really selling away from anything. We've had this clear gap up here. I just don't want to get caught into something, because what could likely happen is we get something like that, and then all of a sudden we pull back up, and then, you know, maybe we didn't even get the entry in there, and we got in on the, you know, there's just so many subjectivity things about Swiss pairs like this. I would just be safe and just wait for a very good place. The next one I'm going to be looking at is 1, 2, 3 on this, and yeah, so Aussie New Zealand is looking phenomenal. Sorry, I just got a message come into my mind, shifted for a sec. So basically what we're looking at over here is, yeah, there is a near miss here, but we are getting follow through commitment now. So that near miss is a little bit long gone now, and we just have to kind of focus on what we have. If we draw this line in the sand over here, we can see that this conveniently lines up with where we're looking to take it. If we go to the 4 hour, we can see here's an isolated entry. It's below all of that price. It's technically through this. We have a 1, 2, 3 lining up over here, and then we have the override, which then becomes over here, and we just have to wait and see. Now, if we do get an entry, great. If it sells off and we get continuations down here, fair enough. That's what I'll be looking at. So Aussie New Zealand's a fairly simple one, but we have to always understand that when we go back to the higher time frame, because of these confluence factors where this missed this high, this missed that high, the same way that this sold off and then came back up, the same thing can happen again. So that is something to really pay attention to, because a lot of people get caught out thinking this is enough, but really and truly, this is a really nice trade. I don't see anything wrong with this if you're taking it. I just think you just need to understand and be more aware of what you're trading into, because yeah, I mean, look, this is not the same, exactly the same, but you know, you could come down here, look for the continuation, and then what happens is it pulls all the way back up. And these things happen, right? You just have to take a message from the market and be ready. So a risk entry over here is definitely something I will be interested in, but it will be surrounded with how we got there, opposed to just taking a risk entry. So that's something that hopefully if we do get it, I'll be able to cover that, and you know, we'll definitely move forward from that. Okay, so there's a lot of subjectivity around the US pairs right now because we haven't got that movement, but as we saw with the DXY, if we are moving lower, then it just makes sense to be looking for longs on Aussie US dollar. I'm not actually looking for a long position right now. I'm looking for confirmation from the market that we are going to be reversing from a key point. So I want to see if this can tap into these areas and then reject or continue to the upside. So it's one to be very patient with, but it's very simple. It's either we push back down from here, we play the range and we can play back into these areas, or we push higher, create a continuation and move up. It's so simple, so easy, and we need something so deliberate. So that's what I'm going to be looking at on that side. If we go to Aussie Yen likewise, again, is a very interesting pair. We are hovering below the value area there. So it's very possible that despite having that area there, I wouldn't worry about that too much, because it is you know, about 250 odd pips away. I would be sticking on the daily right now, or even weekly. The weekly still is phenomenal. It's just not ready yet. One of the reasons why I haven't got it on watch, but we're so close that we can just tap into it, retrace. We get a really nice candle confirmation there, and then we look for daily / 4-hour confirmation, and then we can refine for entries along the way. Don't get me wrong, this could be impulsive and there could be abundance of opportunities in there, but they will always be high risk, only for the reason being is, you know, this has been very, very bullish, and we have that high above. So the last thing you want to be doing is seeing it kind of break there, pushing down here, and then just gives you a small flag here. Like, it's good, but it's still higher risk. What would be less risky is, this is the 4-hour, by the way. So if we had a continuation here, which was high risk, and then we pushed, followed through, we create something a bit larger with more weight, and then we followed through, you know, and then the sequence really just kind of shows its hand. It's great. We can see that price is respecting structure. We can see the nature of how price is moving. We can actually use those parts to our advantage, and then we can move forward from that. And that's the nice thing about it, is when you do not just always take the first entry and you wait for the second or third or the fourth, what tends to happen is you learn from how price is moving, and you're able to capitalize on the next ones. You can see how the mass psychology is being taken out, how price is repeating itself, how it's respecting structure, is it wiki, you know, all these little pieces of the puzzle that kind of get put together, they really do help. And I'll show you just a prime example. I can see it right now. Is if you just understand this for a second, right? You've got these sections here, you know, I'm just lining them on. They're not all perfectly accurate, but you know, I'm just kind of pointing something out for a second. Is we're essentially creating that. We wick through it, we pull people out, we pull people out, we pull people out, we pull people out, right? And it happens time and time again. So if you are taking an entry in these areas, then if you saw this, you'd understand that, okay, this is deliberate, right? And it's those little pieces that really do help you when you are looking for entries, stop placement, confirmations, things like that. But it comes with study as well, right? You need to go off and study nature of different pairs, but this is not something that is always repetitive throughout, you know, years and years. Like, they do different things. Sometimes you might find, just as an example, you'll have your 1, 2, 3 for the short, right? And you'd essentially look for that normally, right? Where you basically have those 3 tops, 3 bottoms. But sometimes what you tend to see is that you get this, and then you get the near miss, and it sells, right? And it does like 6 times within the sequence. And it just happens to be one of the things that, for example, Aussie New Zealand may be doing at the time, or Aussie US dollar. It perhaps may just be giving 2 touches and then near miss to the third, and then sells off. And sometimes it's fair enough, like, you can't do nothing about it, but if you understood it well enough, then you could possibly capitalize on it with a rigorous amount of studies. Going to CAD Swiss. CAD Swiss is looking interesting. There was a trade in here actually. It's a very interesting one, so I'm just going to remove this. Actually, no, I won't. So what we basically have, and I'll go to the line chart, is we have this corrective structure here, right? We're going in continuation to the upside. Well, that's what we're looking for. If we go to the 4-hour, you can see that we kind of approach these areas with an expanding, right? But the more interesting thing is we didn't tap into that high. Okay, and I think this is a massive clue that we could be pulling back up higher to continue to the upside. So what happened was we rejected from this area, which is completely fine. It's always something that we would be very much aware of. And then what we could see here is that we pushed away, formed a continuation pattern just there, really nice. And as you can see, similar to what we were just saying, where you didn't quite complete on the third touch and we sold off, right? But you'd see an abundance of these throughout the whole move. And then essentially what happened is we committed and went. So entry criteria may not have been the easiest to take on this, but what you can see here, if you go to the 15, is, and this is actually a really good example of what I just said, is you basically have the 1, 2, 3, and then what you got inside it was an internal override, right? And then even within that, sometimes, I mean, this is a little bit OTT, but then you get like an internal 3 touch, scoops, taps in and sells. And then what happens was it was kind of close, but it didn't completely tap into the third touch override and near missed it, but then that would have been it. And then how would you have taken that? You would have either gone like this or wait for the next candle if you really wanted to, or in a scenario actually you could have even set pending order there just to get a more refined stop, and you could have gone 10 would have been more than enough and perfect, even with that whole candle considered. Yeah, that's actually a decent trade. So something that hopefully you can take away today and you can just learn from as well is that little piece of price there. There's so much value in these little pieces of information that a lot of people don't see it firsthand. Sometimes you can even line something like this up, and this is not wrong, but also at the same time it's just a little bit OTT. So just that's the main important thing, is where you had the structure, and then what happened was we had the override. We near missed the override, which is completely fine because we had the internal M stop. CAD yen, CAD yen. Oh yeah, with CAD Swiss, I'm definitely just going to be waiting now, because we also have that wick. It's just very not the one that I want to be taking on board compared to the other Swiss pairs. But like I said, there was a trade in there. It's interesting. You would have probably been running around about 10% ish. So yeah, pretty good. Moving on to the next one, which is CAD yen. CAD yen still. I wouldn't even be considering anything on this yet unless it's a long. Only reason being is because how we're moving. We're not really responding so much to price. We're just kind of moving to the upside. There is floors being made, which is nice, like these areas here, and if we come back in here, then at least we know that price could potentially gravitate and come back up. But I just think that we've tested it 1, 2, 3, 4. If we're coming back down and we tap back into these areas, it's likely we drop off a little bit, and then it could get messy. So for those reasons, I'm not looking for any entries just yet. If we get clear deliberate price action moving to the upside, then I wouldn't hesitate on that. I would be interested, but you can see that sometimes with this particular pair, we do range for a longer period of time and then we go. And I think we're seeing something similar here where we're ranging for a longer period of time and then suddenly we're going to go. And then when we do go in those moves, we can actually look at the yen pairs for continuations and see what we can get involved in to that high. Swiss yen, once again, not my most preferred one because once again it's the all-time high situation. We do have this, which kind of makes it a little bit nicer because we have something to trade into. But once we start breaking that and going into all-time high territory, there isn't really a price target we can target. So it does make things a little bit more difficult to trade. And essentially, you don't want to always just be buying the highs because it's one of those things where if the yen does turn around, you've really got nothing to really stand on. So bear that in mind. Euro or Aussie is definitely what I'm going to be looking at. I'm looking for something larger. Doesn't necessarily have to be that. I think price is just a little bit premature, but I've kept it on watch because I do feel like I have potential on this pair. I just need to see what shapes up and how it does develop. It's one of those ones where you're trading in a range at the moment, price is corrective. How can we capitalize it? Well, we need to go intraday. So I'm going to go over to the 1 hour, and then you can see even on the 1 hour, there is structure. Not the easiest to decipher. You really have to be on your ball with pattern separation and how you separate your pairs. And it's just one of those ones, like if you get really good at pattern separation, you can actually trade this pair really well. That's something that I've personally found to be an advantage for when you're trading particular pairs. You just have to learn how to separate the pairs really well, and you can capitalize on it. If you can make sense of this mess or learn to make sense of it, you can make money, right? There's an abundance of opportunity in the markets. I think a lot of people neglect the opportunities that are presented and how they can capitalize on it. But if you isolate a lot of these entries, you can make money. It's more difficult to trade within these periods, I'll be honest with you. But when you've got clear, A to B situations, right, then you can take advantage of this and this for sure. And then the intraday ones within it. So just something to bear in mind when it comes to trading is something which is corrective, especially like Euro Aussie, GBP Aussie. These pattern separations really do help you with capitalizing. There is an abundance of opportunity. You just have to be patient, and you have to understand that price will be messy for a period of time and structure won't be clear. So you'd basically put this in anticipation for structure to become clear, but then remain sharp for you to then execute. So you'd have to be in a top flow state to actually be able to trade that really well. Okay, so EuroCAD is actually one of my favorited pairs as well. Going from the daily, we can see that we've actually created this pattern here, right? And what we want to see here is if we can get rejection, but I want to take the lowest risk possible trade because the sequence of how this is moving currently is quite irregular. Right, we had the rejection, we had this larger correction, and then I just want to see a continuation below my line in the sand. So if something does formulate below or through this low, I'll be all over it. Anything above it, I'm going to leave it. And I've literally, that's the line in the sand, right? If something beautiful shaped up here, I'll leave it. It has to be below the line and it has to be in line with what I'm looking for. Now, it's low risk in the sense that it's below that area, but it still has a higher risk area to it because technically this is all a corrective channel, right? And it can develop into so many different things that even if you took a beautiful trade down there, it could just evolve and be a part of this massive channel. So that's the risk you take when you are taking a trade on EuroCAD at the moment. But if we do clear these lows impulsively, create deliberate price action down here, and we continue, we have an easy play into the low, and I think that's really nice. We don't necessarily need to wait for anything really weighted because there's a huge amount of volume shifted in this area that if we do get the shorts, then you know we could be in a momentum run, but there will be structure, and it means just waiting for that structure. Price is not just going to go without you. There will be structure, there will be opportunity. You just have to be patient and wait for it. Euro Swiss, not something that I'm interested in. There is that little sell-off, but once again, it's not something that is as quick as that sold that can pull back up, right? It's Euro Swiss, so I'm not going to really go into this too much, but to understand why that sold off, there is a point to the left, but once again, I'm not trying to pick and choose every little point. You know, there's that, there's this. It doesn't really matter. It's not so it's not something that I'm really fixated on. I'm more interested in that area there, but we're a long way coming. Euro GBP, I'm looking for the insurance entry to the upside. If we do get one, then I may move this on to watch, but it has to be very deliberate and very clear. I want to see a clear impulse, continuation, continue and up to the upside, but this won't shape up for quite some time, to be honest, and I don't see myself having EG on watch just yet. Would I take a continuation in this area? Well, it would have to be something like this, where it pretty much drops off, comes back up, drops off again, and then comes up like that, and then we're trading there. And the thing about this is it'd have to be clearly through the low and be very deliberate, but honestly, I can't really see that shaping up anytime soon. Once again, that could be formulating throughout the whole month because it's something larger daily and weighted. So EG is just not something that I'm really fixated on right now. I'm going to leave that, let it develop, formulate something really nice, and then I'll come back to it. But if we do get the push up and insurance entry up here, even if it's on the 4 hour, I'll be interested in that. It doesn't have to be this large. It just has to be giving me the right type of price, a clear push up, you know, and then we get something like that. That's deliberate enough for me to consider, okay, fine, I could position myself well enough on that to go long into the next areas of interest. Euro New Zealand is still within its descending channel into this low. I don't believe that it's just ready yet. It could just still continue like this for a number of weeks. Maybe even an additional week before we see a solid push up and then a continuation, which may only formulate some point mid-June. So once again, I'm not really looking for anything in particular on this just yet. I'm going to wait for the higher time frame to be in before I even look at it. EU, I have put on my wildcards this week, just because the DXY has been in its corrective sequence for some time. So if at any point momentum does kick in, I'm going to be sharp and ready for it. And I think that's something that most people should just consider, is that if you're not aware that the DXY has been correcting for this time, well, look at how price moves after it's been in those corrective sequences, right? After price has been in its corrective sequence, it gives these beautiful runs. Price has been in a corrective sequence, you get a decent run, right? That's what we have here. Corrective sequence, and then potentially we would get a decent run to the downside or a decent run to the upside, and that's essentially what I'm waiting for. Euro Yen, I as well, similar to CAD Yen situation, there is price targets above this though, but just very overstretched. There's a value area there. This one I'm not too concerned about, but that would be my next target area if we do start pushing up aggressively. Right now I think it's a waiting game with a lot of these yen pairs, so I wouldn't start jumping into stuff. There's a mini override here where it could sell off, and then if we're down here somewhere we could look for an entry to go short, fair enough. But right now it's not the best holding area for me to be looking for a position. If other yen pairs are going long and this one goes long with it, most likely we're going to take out this area here before we go short. This could even be creating structure. right? You want to be seeing what happens over here. Maybe it comes in corrective and then we get a sell, who knows. We just have to be extra patient and wait for these pairs to shape up, tap into these areas, and then we can take advantage of it. Alert is set, so if it does tag into my line, then I'll be ready and sharp. Otherwise, there's no point really forcing anything. Next, I've got GA. GA is also in its sort of key area. I just think with how things are going and it's getting a little bit more messy, perhaps we might create another low before we go. So call it an M star. We come back down here, we tap into these lows, and then we move. We don't necessarily have to because we have completed on this structure. We've got this pretty much going now. We just need to see if we get a push back up and then we can get continuations to the upside. GA I just filtered out this week because I wasn't really too interested in it, but if you're trading back into this low, there is a decent trade shaping up here. Just putting the 5 on so you can see a little bit more clearly. What I'm going to be looking at is essentially this, and then price taps into this, comes back, and if you do get a 3 touch, that's going to be banging. You know, you can literally manage that really well. And then if we take a flag to pole and we put this to here and then we mimic that over here, you can see that, you know, that really does play out really well. I would give this some time to develop. Is a 2 touch something I would take? Probably not. I'd wait for the 3. So I'm going to be patient with this one. I don't see it necessarily to be jumping on a 2 touch. Even though the 2 touch would be valid and you could have internal structure leading to it, because you can see this is already formulating, I'm still going to be patient with this and just wait and see. The 2 touch isn't completely written off. It just really depends on how this formulates as we approach it. GBP CAD is also something that I think has massive downside potential, but because of how price is moving here, I just want to see things kind of really clear this now. So it was looking like something, but the continuation I'm looking for is a little bit further down. So I would like to see something like this shape up where we've really cleared that low and then we start formulating something below this. It's not the best structure in the world, but it makes sense. If I go to the daily time frame, you can see what we have. We've got this high over here that's been met with structure, and then we've pushed away. Now we go to the 4 hour, and what we can see on the 4 hour is we do have deliberate price shaping up exactly where we are now, right? In fact, you could argue that there is a trade in where we're standing. I just think it's not the easiest to decipher. There's a bit of subjectivity around it. I would rather just wait, get a little bit more confirmation, and then take that trade. It lowers the risk, puts me in a better position mentally, and then I don't have to worry about, is this going to go back up or down? I've got clear confirmation of trend and deliberate price action to back me up. GBP Swiss. So as I mentioned, out of all the Swiss pairs, this was the one that I'm interested in. Still waiting for structure to develop, but if I go to the weekly, what you can see is we've actually tapped into this area. We pushed up, we had a really nice weekly retrace on it. We then created the daily, and then from the daily, we can see that really nice daily candle. And then on the 4, we're basically just waiting for structure to be developed. It could take some time, many things could happen. This is the variation of what I did forecast compared to what I'm waiting for is completely different right now, because I was essentially looking for something like that, but now who knows, we could see something completely different, right? This could more likely turn into a 2 touch. We just need to be extra patient. Could get something like this, and then we come in, we tap into that and we sell. I don't know if that's my typical 2 touch. I don't think so. I think I would just need to reforecast on this one, but let's call it the low. This is the range, and yeah, we're gonna wait to see what happens here. Perhaps we come in here, come back down, and then we make our way back up, and then we get something like that, and we get in on this trade here. I need to see 2 clear lows, really. I want to see 2 clear lows, or you know, something a little bit more deliberate so I can get involved on it. I just don't want to be jumping into something that could hold a little bit too much risk. I want to mitigate against as much risk as possible. So how can I do that? Well, it's very simple. I'm going to look for something which is a little bit more structured, and if I can get some structure in there, great. If I can't, then you know, it is what it is. But I'm going to wait for this one. I'm not really going to over forecast on it. I need to wait and see what happens, but it's not just about that high. Just bear in mind, because of all the confirmations included, we could easily just do this, right? And then even if we came in a bit more, right, we just developed something in that area. Disregard that high there, but even if you put it down here, it still doesn't matter. It's just one of those ones where we've left a clear print, and then this is it, and we're basically looking for continuations to trade. Moving on to the next one, we basically have GBP New Zealand. GBP New Zealand's pretty good, actually, to be honest. I'm just waiting for a continuation below these lows. I just want to see it push through. It doesn't have to be that low, actually. It could be about here. Something very deliberate. I think right now we need a bit of time for this one. Definitely one I'm going to be watching. Even if it's here, it's still fine. That would be really nice too. It's just, I need to see this formulate. I need to see it just really be deliberate. It's kind of correctively moving in that channel as well, so the more weight we have, the better it is. Something like this wouldn't be terrible, because then we kind of feel this move where we have an A to B here, and then from the top of the correction, you know, or even from the bottom of the correction we have here, and then we create the next larger flag, and then it ends up being ready by Friday, Thursday. So, and then we can play into that low, which is nice. And then if you look at the bigger time frame, you know, we're basically looking at this overall move to see if it gets filled. Probably unlikely, probably get to the strongest magnet point over here, but that's what I'm going to be looking at to wait and see. GBP US dollar, not really one I'm very interested in because of the subjectivity around the DXY, but if the DXY does start to shape up, then you can bet your bucks I'll be moving a lot of these USD pairs on to watch. It just requires a little bit of patience on there, so I'm not going to force or look for anything just yet unless we tap into these value areas. But yeah, it's not really something for me. GJ is actually looking okay, but I think likewise with the other yen pairs, if we don't see that commitment across the board, then it's really unnecessary to just be forcing a trade just to get in very short term. Yeah, there could be some trades in there, but really and truly I am waiting for the really good run where we do get that sequencing and we can go. How much time could it take? We don't really know. Technically there's a lot of subjectivity around this as well, because we have this high that's now been missed, so we can remove that and actually just focus on that. And it's likely that we can come back and gravitate to that. Even if we created something here, this could still formulate a decent trade in here to actually trade into that low, but then you have to be aware that we're going to come straight back up. So then if you get in for a risk reward on this, there probably is a decent risk reward, probably not 10, probably 40 in my opinion. Probably get in with about 18 to be fair, and then you'd get into there for about 5%. So there could be a trade in there, but it comes with risk because that can easily just, you know, push back up to that high. So bear that in mind if you are looking at GJ. New Zealand CAD, I'm still waiting for this to complete. We are moving towards the high. You can see that we have the near miss there. We're just really gravitating towards it. You could look for a long position in here if you really wanted to. I think longs are still looking pretty nice because we've kind of completed on that middle section now, and we're basically continuing. So if you are looking for a position, you could wait for something quite deliberate, breaking above this area right here, and there could be a decent, sorry, it's hard to pinpoint that sometimes, and then yeah, we'll get it in here, get that continuation here, and then boom, you get into that bit. Could be easy trade right there. New Zealand Swiss, not something I'm looking at personally. I'm going to leave that. Even if it shapes up to be the most beautiful trade in the world, it's not in the area that I'm interested in. New Zealand US dollar, I am waiting for this to complete large structure. So likewise with the other dollar pairs, not really interested in it just yet. I have set alert though for this point, so if we do just somehow rapidly move there, at least I'll know, and then I'll be able to position myself accordingly and potentially look for shorts. Then I got New Zealand yen. You can see that we're still hovering below that low area, hence the reason why I'm just not really too sure about GJ just yet. I'm going to wait and see if we can tap into it, and then over the course of this week to next week, or maybe even the week after, we might be ready to go. USD CAD, it's that low. That's the low I'm looking at. If we can gravitate, tap into this low, DXY shapes up, we'd be good to go. It just requires a little bit more patience, but I'm just going to wait for that. I'm going to set an alert to just see what happens when it does get there, just so I'm aware. But really and truly, it's nothing that I'm fixated on. USD CAD, Swiss, sorry, USD Swiss is, like I said, this one could sell off if the USD DXY does sell off, then we could see USD Swiss being that pair that does. Right now we do have the near miss up there, but we could still push, create continuation and sell, and that could be ready, you know, in about 2 weeks to a week. But I'd like to see something weighted and deliberate and so forth. So I'm gonna keep this one on extra watch for next week, but yeah, that's why I highlighted blue, but we'll have to wait and see. And then USD yen, likewise with a lot of the yen pairs, I just want to see this push up. If we get a deliberate push down, we get a trade in there, we might actually get a decent trade. It might be short term, it could become long term, but there could be a decent trade in there, so I will be very sharp for that. I think I've set my alert. No, I haven't, so I'll set my alert on that. If we tap into it, then I'll focus on it, but it is on my wild cards anyway, so additional pairs, so I will be checking that. And then USD ZAR is the last one. I think USD ZAR has upside potential to it. We just need to see some structure formulate. I'll be looking at something like that, where perhaps maybe we even tap into that low, who knows, but something more so like this. And then if we can just complete on that, then perhaps we can get positioned for a risk entry to go long, and then we can play into that area there. And that basically summarizes my whole currency pairs. I didn't go through the indices as much, so I'll just quickly briefly click through them. They're quite self-explanatory. See, I'm looking for the longs on the US 500, I'm looking for the longs on the US 30, I'm looking for, likewise I'd be looking to play this range now, so longs on the DAX. And then Aussie 200, not really much, but I would look for a long as well. If we go into commodities, likewise it's subjective. There's potentially a trade there. I think it's a bit zoomed in right now, but yeah, if we're looking at that range play, I'd wait for that to be the flag. Silver's at the bottom of this range, just not fully ready yet, but it's a stunning pair to be focusing your attention towards, because it could have a decent A to B movement here. Natural gas, oh, okay, this one is potentially going to shape up for me. I was looking at it to tap into here, give me that V shape, gives me a continuation and go short, so that's something that I will be paying close attention towards. And then I've got oil, where there was this oil trade here, which I was just looking at, and it did happen to play out really well, which is nice. And then we've got palladium, where palladium could actually shape up to be a really nice short play. Oh wow, okay, that's a nice one. Actually, I'd missed that, went under the radar on me, so I will be moving that onto my watch list now, just to kind of go into a bit deeper. So how I'm going to be looking to take that is I'm going to be waiting to get to this area, take an insurance entry and go short. That's how I'll be looking to take that. Platinum, platinum I'm not really worried about, to be honest. There's potential for the long, but it's just not the best. And copper looked amazing last time I looked at it, and likewise copper is coming in for a decent trade right now, similar to exactly what we saw on palladium. Copper would be better because for me spreads is much better, but I'd be looking at that, and then I'd be looking to go short. So something to just bear in mind, there's a few really good trades in there. It looks like copper and palladium are under the radar gem, but keeping that in mind, that basically covers the main watch list for this week. And yeah, have a good week guys, and I'll catch you in the next video tomorrow.